Welcome to the Missionary Mobilization Podcast, a resource for Christian leaders who want to increase the number of missionaries around the world. This podcast is a ministry of the Center for Missionary Mobilization and Retention at Trinity Bible College and Graduate School. Visit us online at missionarymobilization.org. Now, here's your host, the founder and director of the Center for Missionary Mobilization and Retention, David Jacob.
Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Our goal is to equip and encourage mobilizers and missions pastors from around the world. So don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app. And if you could give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, well, that would help us reach more listeners. We'd love it if you would share this podcast with a friend, and please let us know how you like the podcast or if you have any suggestions for show topics. Just email us at hello@missionarymobilization.org. Also, if you're interested in learning more about Trinity Graduate School's Master of Arts Intercultural Studies degree with optional concentration in missions mobilization, visit trinitybiblecollege.edu. This degree is specifically designed for missionaries, missions pastors, and agency mobilizers. After a recent class, one student said, "I really appreciated the teaching and abundance of resources and book recommendations. Each day I felt excited, energized, and better equipped for what God has called me to do." So you can find more information in our show notes or by visiting trinitybiblecollege.edu. Our topic today is the marketplace and mobilization, and our guest is Phillip Henry of Nations Coffe. Phillip is the founder of Nations Coffee Company, a business that seeks to connect people's love for coffee with a passion for the evangelization of unreached peoples. He and his wife Michelle just welcomed their first son, Bo, into the world earlier this fall. So congratulations, Phillip, and welcome to the program today.
Thanks, Dave. It's good to be here.
This is great, man. I'm glad to have you on, and it's always fun to talk about coffee and mobilization. So when you can combine the two, man, this is just great. Tell us a little bit about your background and your previous work with the Navigators.
Yeah, great question. So growing up, I've been exposed to missions pretty much my whole life just through different family members. Had some aunts and uncles and a cousin that were over in the Congo and then Cameroon doing Bible translation with Wycliffe Bible translators, and then some other family members that were in a country which I can't talk about, just one of those more sensitive, closed off areas. And then I've got just other family members that are prominent in the Christian world and that are just passionate about missions. And so it's always been something that's discussed and just part of the everyday conversation in my house. And, we had the Joshua Project, Unreached Peoples pamphlets and stuff just sitting on the kitchen table or maybe in the bathroom. So that was some pretty good bathroom reading compared to most of the stuff that you might find on a linen closet or something. But anyways, so yeah, just something that was always kind of around and exposed to. And then, so because of that, I had a pretty early awareness, and then just my heart for missions and reaching people definitely grew over time through connecting with friends in high school who were immigrants. And then, when I got to college, I got exposed and introduced to the Navigators campus ministries. And it was awesome because it really helped me understand how important discipleship is, and it gave me a picture and a vision for the Great Commission, which is go make disciples of all nations. And so I don't know about you, but to me that can be such an overwhelming mandate. It's like, hey, go make disciples of all nations. And when you think about the need in the world, it can just be soul crushing at times. And even went through a pretty dark time through my college years where I really wrestled pretty deeply with, okay, what do I do? What does this mean for me? And if just the implications of heaven and hell and God's purpose in the world and God's kingdom and where do I fit in. And I think probably a lot of people go through the same thing, especially people who are missionally minded. So again, getting involved with Navigators and looking at Jesus's model of going deep with a few key people that he picked out, discipling them, and then training them to go make disciples, and they would go make disciples, and just the exponential growth versus other methods, I think, was very inspiring. And so after college, I went to University of Georgia, go Dogs, and after college, I moved to Eugene, Oregon, and that's kind of where the coffee part comes in, just because, um, the Pac Northwest, it's
Oh,
very
yeah.
much
That's
the
HQ, man. Yeah,
oh
coffee
yeah,
headquarters, right?
exactly, yeah, Seattle and all the different coffee companies up there. So
Yeah.
actually, when I moved there, I was still putting flavored creamer in my coffee, which is definitely yeah, that's such a rookie move, but
Right, right.
um, anyway, so over time there, and of course with doing ministry, a lot of times you're meeting at a coffee shop, and so I guess I just was exposed to how coffee is a great way, less expensive than a meal, but a similar dynamic to bring people together, and it's just something that a lot of people can bond over. And then again, being exposed to specialty coffee in the Pac Northwest kind of merged those two things together, the love and passion for coffee, and then also just um, doing missions and discipleship, and yeah, also just being exposed to being in Eugene, Oregon, which is kind of like a mini island of weirdness and progressiveness, and it's several years ahead of where the culture is going to be on the coast, So um, it was interesting to see how to interact with people and how to share the gospel in different contexts than me, raised in the Bible Belt. So in a lot of ways, it felt more like going to Europe or another post-Christian culture. And so, anyways, that was, even though it was just campus ministry, quote unquote, it felt a little bit more like a cross-cultural ministry. So, um, yeah, after 2 years of that, moved back to Athens, Georgia, and met my wife, and we were married. And with life changing so much, oh, and of course, we just welcomed our first son into the world, like I said. And with life changing so much, I still wrestle with that question of, okay, God, what do you require of me? Because I see the need everywhere, but I have all these different responsibilities. I have a responsibility to my church, I have a responsibility to my family. There's still the mandate to make disciples of all nations. What does that look like? How does that fit in, combined with this business and entrepreneurial spirit that I have felt along the years too? So, uh, and that's kind of where that's where Nations Coffee formed. It was an idea that was percolating for a long time, pun intended. And
Sure. That's a good one.
yeah,
I
yeah.
like it.
No, it's pretty terrible. But hey, I'm a dad now, so
There you
I can tell
go.
dad jokes.
You can. You
Yeah.
can. That's
So,
awesome.
but yeah, that's kind of how it all came together.
That's great, man. I love those different influences from your family and navigators and, experience with immigrants. It's just such a great blend, pun intended,
Yeah.
of.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Oh man.
So let's move on to the next question, though. You recently took a perspectives course, and I want to hear about how this impacted your spiritual journey, especially as it relates to coffee, and then we'll get into a little bit more about Nations Coffee and what you guys are doing with that.
Yeah. So when I was in college at University of Georgia, a lot of my friends took perspectives course, and so I had heard about it and been exposed to it, but didn't really know what it was, other than it was this really intense missions course, and I was already doing navigators and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, that sounds interesting, but um, never took it. Then moving back again, asking myself, okay, what does this look like? I figured that taking the course would be a great way to kind of refocus and help give some answers to that question. So that was the point of taking it. And also together with my wife, trying to bring a missional foundation early on in our marriage, which, we're still figuring all that stuff out, but that was the intention behind it. But it was a good experience, and I think, I don't remember all the facts and figures or all the stories or all the statistics or anything like that, but I think my main takeaways were just the need is great, God is moving, um, and it's not just unilateral, or it's not just from the United States to other places, but that missionaries are going from everywhere to everywhere. And I think that challenged me to taking that course, just challenged me to again ask the question, what is my role? Not necessarily, okay, I have to drop everything and go live in a hut, but just, okay, what is God calling me to do uniquely? And so, within the general of God's will of go make disciples. So I think that was the biggest impact.
That's awesome. And I love that question, what is my role in the Great Commission? And I wish it was something that every believer asked themselves, because so many in the church think that missions is for the missionaries only. And but it isn't. It's for all disciples. It's for all disciples. And so and I'm preaching to the choir here, I know. But it's just such a great question to constantly ask ourselves, really. I mean, it is good to rest in knowing what God wants specifically for us. But to be able to ask, hey, what's my role in this big picture? I mean, I've actually been praying lately, to be honest. What more can I do for the unreached? I have such a burden and a passion. There's got to be something more that we can do. And so I am praying through that and wanting to do more, and wanting to hear from the Lord about, that my specific role through my ministry here. Maybe it's through my family, right? And so is one of the changes that you made as a result of taking this perspectives course and learning a little bit more about missions, one of those changes was Nations Coffee? Is that right?
Yeah. So the whole idea, and like I said, part of this was coming out of perspectives, asking what's my role, and I almost feeling like I would be being disobedient in a sense if I neglected the things that God had been growing inside of me, or my unique take on it. Not that I'm that special, but just everybody has a role to play, right? So, and so my idea was, okay, if I can create a business, it's not a nonprofit, but it's a for-profit, missionally minded company. So, as it says on our website, we're not a nonprofit, we're a business on a mission. And so, I'm trying to support my family and provide and all that. And so, making a good product, charging fair prices and all that kind of stuff. But then beyond that, just using that platform to help create a business or a brand where every brand interaction is doing a couple things, starting by growing an awareness of the cause, because I think similar to maybe human trafficking back in 2010 and 11 was something that not a whole lot of people were talking about, and then it just sort of exploded in awareness. Now, how much good has come out of that? I'm sure a lot of it, and some of it's the hype has sort of faded away, but I think Unreached Peoples is still at that sort of under the radar level of exposure. And so I want to start by just putting it front and center, even in the name, Nations Coffee, coming from Revelation 7:9. That's the verse behind it. Starting with exposure and awareness, and then also sharing the Joshua Project Unreached People group of the day. And hopefully when people follow us on social media, we will help them to be praying. And I think the thing about prayer is it's repetition, so it's keeping it top of mind, but it's also changing people's hearts and growing their heart for the unreached as every day as they're continuing to pray, which it's definitely been doing for me. If nothing else, we don't, if 3 people like it, at least I'm getting the reminder to pray for the unreached. And then past that, God's actually using those people to help carry out His work. So um, we got a little Coffe or acronym PERC, PERC, and the mission is kind of summed up: people everywhere reached for Christ through prayer, evangelism, relationship, and charity. And so, again, the prayer bit is um, sharing the Joshua Project Unreached People group of the day. Evangelism is just, again, as you're praying more, hopefully God's working on your heart to be more evangelistic and share your faith and share the gospel with people. And then relationships, again, whether it's discipleship, whether it's relationship with vendors or customers, just being intentional in our relationships. Um, and then charity is taking some of the money that's coming in and honoring God by giving some of that back to other ministries or true ministries. I don't see myself as a ministry. I see myself, again, as a business, but taking some of that and giving it to ministries who are not for-profit companies, but nonprofits. And the benefit of doing that is we get to create partnerships to where people who are experts at what they're doing, and they're actually out there sending people, and they're out there on the ground and mobilizing people and all those types of things. We're getting to help support them and connect people with those organizations. And I don't claim to be the expert in any of that. Again, I'm just trying to be a connector. I think that's part of my role. And I think a huge success story would be if someone heard about our company, got engaged, and was like, "Wow, Unreached Peoples," and then sort of became aware of it. God grew their heart, and then they were able to connect up and then go. If God was able to use us to help take somebody from unawareness to being a Great Commission person, whatever,
Yeah,
you know what I mean, a missionary. There, yeah, that's what they're
sure.
called. That would be a huge win. So that's a little bit about kind of our vision and what we're about.
I love that. And it's a new year, and we're announcing a new partnership here with the Missionary Mobilization Podcast and the Center for Missionary Mobilization and Retention and Nations Coffee. And so we're so blessed to be partnering with you, Philip, on what you're doing through your business. And so there's a portion of your website that lists our ministry, and when people click on that and they kind of go to our ministry's page on your website, nationscoffee.co, is that right?
That's right.
Then with every bag of coffee that is sold, you'll donate $1 back to the center here, and we are so grateful for that. And so thank you for partnering with us in ministering to the unreached and in training, helping us to train others and to get the word out about the need and ways that pastors and missionaries and mobilizers can minister and send more people to the unreached. So we're very grateful for this new partnership with you guys. And I know that you partner with other ministries as well. And so could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I didn't mention that we just started the business back in May during 2020. So, and my child was born. So I will always look back on 2020 fondly, or with some bright spots amongst the dark year. But yeah. So right now we're currently partnered with just a couple of organizations and looking to expand that as we see it being a good fit. And so right now we're partnered with Joshua Project and also with Cafe 1040, which is an organization local to Athens, Georgia, where I live. And Cafe 1040, I think most people probably know Joshua Project and just doing a lot of really education and raising awareness of unreached people groups amongst the church. And then Cafe 1040, like I said, local organization, so they're pretty special to us because they're right in our backyard, and their whole purpose and mission is connecting people who are asking the question, what does it look like to go serve an unreached people group and to be a missionary to an unreached people group, partnering those people with folks that are already doing it and to let them get a true taste of what that'd be like, just because there's internships for so many other things, but that's that's pretty unique to have such a specific focus on that. Um, so yeah, we love those guys.
Yeah, they do a great job. We did a podcast with Cafe 1040 just a few months back, and they've done an excellent job. I think that episode's called "In the Office," which may sound a little bit boring, but for new mobilizers, especially if you're a new mobilizer with your agency. It is very helpful in how to organize your work and how to keep track of those that you're trying to mobilize or to recruit, and how to do follow up well with them. And so Cafe 1040 does such a good job of that. And so we highlighted them a few months ago. And yeah, the way that I've heard it, their ministry described is for missions maybes. And so if there are those that are wanting to perhaps go long term as a missionary, but not quite sure. They do intense overseas mentorship with missionaries. Like their missionaries' job is to mentor students that come to them, and so it's just a great ministry. And Joshua Project is as well. And so I'm so glad that you're partnering with them and now adding us in the loop as well. It's just a real blessing. So, do you happen to know of other businesses that are doing similar ministry like this, where they are very missions minded and are using the marketplace for missions?
Um, I don't really know of any businesses off the top of my head like that, but I do know that there's a lot of people thinking about it. And I think there's a growing awareness of, or just there's other people like me out there that are trying to figure it out and see what it looks like, and find a good way to make it work. In fact, since the website went live and we started roasting, I've had a couple folks reach out and be like, "This is so cool. I was thinking of starting a business called XYZ, and we have a similar heart." And in fact, one of them had a very, very similar name to Nation's Coffee. So I was like, "Man, I'm glad I got there first." So, um, but anyways, I know there's a lot of other people out there, and we're all just kind of figuring it out together. And so hopefully, if nothing else, that this podcast can be an encouragement to someone who's thinking about, is this a viable way to serve God? And hopefully it's just an encouragement to keep exploring that as a legitimate, viable option. It's not second best or something, because and it's not all just about giving money either. That's I'm so happy we're able to honor God and bless other people through that. But even just having a business has opened up so many conversations along the way. Hey, what's this about? Oh, let me tell you. And again, raising that awareness and engaging people with the cause, especially believers. We're targeted at believers because they're the ones that are going to care about our cause. And I think it's definitely underrepresented in the world, but even in the church, I think it's grossly just underrepresented, and people just aren't aware. So I've seen people kind of be like, "What? How come I never heard about this before? How come nobody talks about unreached peoples?" And so um, I kind of got off topic there. But anyways, yes, if you can make a business like that also serves the same purpose, then um, I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah, and that's what I just love about your story is because it's so new, and it's not like you've done this before, right? And you're kind of in a sense taking a step of faith and saying, "Hey, God's working on us here. Let's do this thing." And that can be a little bit risky. And so hopefully through this conversation today, it will inspire others to say, "You know what, God's been speaking to me about something, and I've been a little bit maybe fearful to kind of jump in and go for it because it seems a bit risky. But I just love that about your story, and the fact that you're, only a few months into this too is it's just very, very inspirational. So could you talk to us about the future vision for Nations Coffee, and how else do you see this? Do you want your business to impact the world?
That's a good question, and I'm almost hesitant to answer too specifically just because I have always been a person with a lot of ideas, and I've kind of got to the point where I'm almost hesitant to tell everybody, because then everybody's like, cool, he's definitely going to do that. So, and then I feel like, oh no, I let people down if things didn't go exactly as I was thinking. But with all that said, all that context, I'm holding it with an open hand and just saying, and as long as we're up and running, if we're accomplishing the purpose that we put on the website, then it will be a success no matter what. Now, with that being said, who knows where it could go? It could grow to being reaching out and connecting with a lot of different churches. A lot of churches serve coffee, and I've seen it. Maybe using that as a marketing tool, but also a not just a marketing tool for nations, but a marketing tool for unreached peoples. I mean, think about it. You're going up to get your cup of coffee at church, and you see this, promotional sheet about the purpose of the business and what is this. And again, if it just sparks that awareness in somebody and it just plants a seed, that could be that could be something that we could grow into um, as we continue to grow. And maybe it means building direct partnerships with um, farmers and growers in different regions, maybe even hard to reach regions through just vocational ministry, but going there with business opportunity, and now you've got a connection and you're building a relationship with locals and things like that. So, as we grow, that could be a possibility. Um, there's just so many different ways it could go, but it's pretty exciting, and but I try to balance that with keeping my feet on the ground too, or my head on the ground, feet on the ground, head in the clouds. You know what I'm trying to say. Keeping it realistic.
Keeping it real.
Yeah,
I
keeping it
get what
real.
you're saying. I too am a bit entrepreneurial, not necessarily in the business side of things, but in the nonprofit side of things. And I'm constantly coming up with these ideas, some that are a bit out there, and some that have worked really well, and others that have failed, and that's okay. I think we need to dream big, and so man, I'm just so excited for you. It's just so great to hear how a business is so missionally minded and wanting to educate and evangelize and to promote and inspire and to partner with others like you're doing. It's so inspirational. And so perhaps there are ministries that are listening, or church leaders that are listening, that they'd like to partner with you on this. How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think the best way to get in touch with me is just reach out at nationscoffeeco@gmail.com. And if you have any questions about that, the contact info is on the website too, nationscoffee.co. So just nationscoffeeco@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram and Facebook, but if it's more like a serious business inquiry or something like that, emails a little easier. We mostly use the social media platforms for marketing and stuff like that. But yeah, that would be great. I'd love to connect with different people just to hear if this podcast encouraged you, or if there's any way that we could maybe help each other out. No promises, but just I would love to connect with anybody. Or like Dave said, if you work at a church and you might be, or a cafe or something like that, and you might be interested in creating some sort of partnership that way, that would be really cool too.
Yeah, well, it'll be exciting to see how God uses your business for ministry and for missions. And And so it's a wonderful thing, and we'll be sure to put all those links that you mentioned in our show notes. So if you go to missionarymobilization.org/podcast, all the show notes from today's episode will be there. And we'd like to especially thank Assemblies of God World Missions, who helped sponsor our podcast today. You can join AGWM's pipeline to receive personal, guided assistance through the process of applying for overseas service. The need is great, and as we've heard today, the opportunities are endless. Visit Assemblies of God World Missions at agwm.org. And of course, we also want to thank our brand new partner, Nations Coffe. You can check them out at nationscoffee.co to order some freshly roasted beans that ship right to your door. And $1 from every bag goes towards Unreached missions efforts, including our ministry here at the Center for Missionary Mobilization and Retention. So, Phillip, thank you so much, my friend, and it was just so great having you on the show. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Dave. It's been a pleasure.
Well, until next time, everyone, let's keep praying for more laborers to work in His harvest fields.
You've been listening to the Missionary Mobilization Podcast, a ministry of the Center for Missionary Mobilization and Retention at Trinity Bible College and Graduate School. You can access free resources online at missionarymobilization.org. Also, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Missionary Mobilization. Thanks for listening.